Order. I want to again announce to everybody that I do have my cell phone out on front of me, but that is there because of my hearing aids, and and I can adjust them through the phone, and without that, I sometimes have difficulty hearing. So understand that that's there. I'm not communicating with anybody. So we have just a couple of minor adjustments to the well, let's do a roll call first. Our secretary is missing.
I'm happy to do that.
Norma, would you please do the roll call?
Yes, Chair. Director Katsev?
Here.
Director Lynn Finley? I'm sorry, Treasurer Lynn Finley?
Here.
Vice Chair Jan McCordy?
Present.
Chair Paul Garza?
Present.
Noted we have 4 members present, and Secretary Susan Savage is yet to join, but we do have a quorum, Chair.
Susan just walked in the room now. We're ready to go.
Okay.
Wonderful. Noting that Susan has joined the dais and all members are present.
So the public comment on the overall agenda, we're going to defer until we go to open session. And so we are now going to hear public comment on those items for closed session that are listed. Public comments may be offered on items listed for closed session prior to visitors being excused from the room while the board goes into closed session. We remind you that board policy is a 20-minute total time for the period of the agenda, and each presenter is allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Please be respectful in your remarks and considerate of others who may wish to speak. With that, I'll recognize any public comments at this time on our closed session.
Chair, can you read out what the closed session items are?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Closed session item, Personal Government Code 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators over the 700 River Drive, Fort Bragg, California. Our negotiators are Wayne Allen, Chief Restructuring Officer from Mendocino Coast, and Eric Stevens, President of the Northern California Network in Mendocino, under negotiations terms of the lease dated July 1st, 2020. Our second item is 54956.8, also conference with real property negotiators on the 721 River Drive, Fort Bragg. District negotiators appointed an ad hoc subcommittee and legal counsel. Negotiating parties are GL Bruno, agent, Mendocino Coast Medical Plaza, LLC. Under negotiation, price and terms of a payment. Then the next item is Government Code 56956.9D4, and that will be on a conference with legal counsel, initiation of litigation, one potential case. Okay. With that, is there any public comments? Okay, Mr. McDonald.
Just that the final item is 54956. It was read as 56956. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll now go into closed session, so I need to excuse all of our attendees.
Recording stop.
Yeah, I'm waiting to make sure that I get the sign that we're okay. Okay,
All right.
good. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. We're now at public comment on any items that are not on the agenda this evening.
Chair, I think you have a few report outs.
I think that's this supposedly after public comment? Okay, let me do that first then. Okay. Okay, in terms of a report out from closed session, number one, negotiations are now concluded with Adventist Health, and we are going to be posting a resolution, our resolution document on the website. Item 2, or rather 3B, there is no reportable action, and item 3C, there's no reportable action. With that, let's move to public comment. Does anyone wish to address the board at this time? The board now welcomes public comments for items not on the agenda. Board policy is a 20-minute total time limit for this portion of the agenda. Each presenter is allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Please be respectful in your remarks and considerate of others who may wish to speak. Anybody wish to address the board? Anyone online?
We do not have any hands raised at this time.
Okay, with that, then
No hand raised?
let's go on. We're going to modify the agenda to accommodate the fact that we have our attorney with us now. And we're going to we're going to consider item 5D first. Okay? Okay. So we have now, that's the bylaws modification. So that's one item of new business. Public comments will be heard on each item. Remember, board policy is a 20-minute total time for this portion of the agenda, and each presenter is allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Again, please be respectful in your remarks and considerate of others who may wish to speak. So does anybody wish to address the, well, no, we have to go to board first, right?
Staff report
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
Okay, so the item is to receive and consider adoption of the bylaws amendment dated 2/27/25. And the recommended action is to adopt the amended board bylaws of that date, and the bylaws are attached. So let's go to board questions first.
Would you like me to read the staff
Yeah,
report?
please.
So the recommended action tonight is a small one, to adjust the standing committee membership to 2 board members only and update the planning committee jurisdiction. Currently, our board bylaws call for up to 6 community members to be members of the standing finance and planning committees. And for the past year, the district has struggled to properly convene calendar committee meetings due to non-aligned member schedules. Achieving a quorum is required for the committee to conduct its business. Further, community members participating in such committees are bound to the requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. Violations of the Brown Act could risk both penalties to the district and hamper the ability of key community stakeholders to exchange relevant information. In an analysis, the intent of the original bylaws was to ensure open and public participation in planning and finance matters. Participation of community members and receipt of community input may be better achieved through well-planned board meetings, community engagement workshops, and ad hoc advisory groups. As a landlord, rather than a health services operator, the current work of the district focuses on confidential real estate negotiations, as well as appropriately navigating a partnership with a health operator with proprietary business transactions. Much of the associated work in the area is properly designated by the Brown Act as subject to confidential closed sessions of the board rather than open sessions of a standing committee. In addition, the district has no staff and therefore no responsibility for human resource policies at the moment, compensation, or benefits actions. Should a staffing project be authorized by the board at some time in the future, the general project planning and oversight language that exists is adequate to engage the committee as needed. Given the district's current mission, it is advisable to amend the bylaws to limit standing committee membership to 2 board members and to remove defunct activity from the planning committee. These changes would support timely and productive public meetings with appropriate community input on agendized items. As the district embraces its new mission, this adjustment to align the bylaws with current roles and goals will focus and facilitate the work of the standing committees, and there are no anticipated fiscal impacts from that decision.
So effectively, what we ran into is, as we know, we were talking about identifying community members who would be participants in our planning committee, and we have done a little bit of that in the past. And we thought that would be a very good strategy to initiate the kind of robust discussion we need around the facility primarily. It turns out that all that's going to do, if we are obligated to follow the rules of the Brown Act, that's going to limit those discussions very severely. So that sometimes the Brown Act can get in your way rather than help you. While I think we all believe in the value of open meetings and don't want to compromise that. In this case, it's going to make it difficult. So, for instance, one of the people, hopefully he doesn't mind me mentioning him, one of the people we were intending to invite was Mr. Ramos. But that would mean that he would not be able to talk to those board members or other members, even in the Healthcare Foundation, if another member of the Healthcare Foundation board happened to be on as well. So it creates a really difficult situation. And going forward, we want as much public participation in this, in the redesign, whatever we end up doing with the facility as possible. So anyway, with that, board questions?
I don't know.
Questions? Susan, yeah.
Okay, so understood that we want to maximize community input and engagement in a meaningful way as we move forward, because this isn't going to be something that we're going to be doing all on our own. And so I'm curious, how does that, because I run into this in other organizations before, when you invite people to come participate, however, they have no agency, they have no vote, they're just there to share, that makes it harder for people to feel that they're involved in a meaningful way in the process. And I don't know if that's a concern or not, in terms of getting more than just two board members sitting there by themselves, having what should be a much richer conversation. It makes sense to me that when we recruit and appoint people to this committee, that some parameters in terms of their availability for meetings might be part of that discussion. I'm just not sure what we're going to end up inadvertently doing if we remove the requirement for community members.
Let me answer that, okay, please. First of all, I've come to you and shown you the binder we have from what I call the Hospital 2030 Advisory Committee. That was just a group I put together to give me advice, nothing formal about it. But we have a binder like this that we put together from input from a whole lot of people. So I think that was a pretty productive model, and I think that we would be doing that as well. As I talked to people who we intended to appoint to this committee, when I told them that they would be obligated to the Brown Act, they didn't want to participate because that would limit what they can do. They can't talk to their neighbors. There's all kinds of people they can't talk to. So I don't think that, I think the idea, well, I appreciate, the point that it may potentially give some people some sense of agency. I think people in this community are very passionate about this hospital and want to participate. And effectively, everybody in the public is open to these meetings. They will be Brown Act. Okay?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, looking at it from my own participation, part of my life has been planning, and when it was a Brown Act committee, it would be impossible for me to participate because unless I would have to sit silently because there were two people from the board on the planning committee. Now, that sort of eliminates my expertise and experience and motivation, really. So looking at it from that point of view, now going forward, if a planning committee is not beholden to the Brown Act, and there are community people and board people sitting around a table, do I have to be, as a board member, invited to this committee in order to participate? Is this committee open to the public? Then what is how do you visualize this? Because it's,
Okay, well, let me
Go
answer
ahead.
that.
So it's
It
a
is-
question to
it
you.
is it absolutely is open to the public, as all of our public, it's a public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who wants to attend may attend. So there's no restriction there. With respect to people who are on the planning committee, the board members on the planning committee, yeah, if you happen to be the third person, then you can certainly attend, but you can't participate. However, all board members have the opportunity to fully participate in our board meetings and make whatever comments and additions that they want, including having that opportunity to make comments at the end of the meeting as well. But it's certainly through discussion, thorough.
so if, let me just follow this. I'm just trying to get clear, not trying to be combative. So if it's, it may sound that way because I'm from the Bronx and it's my accent, so don't take it that way. So if we're not beholden to the Brown Act, what is stopping a third board member from participating?
I'm sorry, it is covered by the Brown Act. That was the issue. These
The
are
issue-
Brown Act meetings.
But the idea was to take this planning committee into an ad hoc committee of some kind.
No.
But if you're not,
Yeah.
No, the idea is to remove community members from the Brown Act requirement
Okay.
only.
Mhm, all right.
And one of the other requirements is that, you just heard from a change in legislation, the community members, if they're part of a Brown Act committee, they got to show up in the room. They can't Zoom in. So there are a lot of limitations that would make
Oh,
it
that's right.
harder.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm good.
yeah, okay.
So,
Dr. McGordy.
yeah, this is a standing committee, and the Board of Supervisors has standing committees, and there's only 2 supervisors on them, but then they have a full house of community members that come to those meetings to participate and share. And that's, I kind of think what we're looking at is to continue this standing committee, which is kind of narrow and limited, but also to consider an ad hoc committee in addition, because when we talk about changes, it's, you can't wait 4 times a year to get anything done. So this is just in our bylaws about the standing committee, which would continue, but it's limited in what it can do.
Are there questions at this point? Okay, we can go to public comment. We have anybody who wishes to address this item? Mr. Maroney.
Good evening, Gabriel Quinn Maroney. I'm still just kind of confused exactly on how it will literally change and influence. For me personally, I would have no problem working under the Brown Act, and I would show up in person, personally. If that opens it up, for other people, I can see that, but it's like the last planning meeting was canceled. I would have preferred to have met. I had issues that I wanted to bring to the committee and, people that I talked to in the public, and it's just hard for me to really understand what the difference is. But I understand you're trying to be able to open up the dialogue and people speak more freely and not be bound by that. So it could make a lot of sense, but it's a little confusing to me, is what I would say.
I agree.
And
I
yeah,
agree.
and so, but
And
thank you.
Mr. Maroney, may I just comment
Yeah.
briefly? I'm not really supposed to comment, but it was a
Yeah.
big surprise to us. Anyway.
that was in there,
We
right?
continue to learn about the Brown Act.
Okay, yeah, and just personally, me, I would show up in person, and I don't mind adhering to the Brown Act. Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Ramos, you wanted to? Oh, okay, okay. Mr. McDonald?
First of all, the chair should refrain from making written comments in the agenda, as in the chair's report, about items that are action items in the meeting, because that puts the heavy hand of the chair on the issue before it's heard. There should at least be a pretense of coming here undecided about an issue. So this isn't the first time I've had to say that about things that are in the chair's report. And just as the chair is seemingly unaware about proper procedure regarding action items, this chair's language in his report makes it clear that he's served for well over a year on this board and over a year as the chair without basic knowledge regarding the Brown Act and standing committees. And he just more or less admitted to just learning about it recently. I find that disconcerting at best, if not appalling. Furthermore, this district has functioned for years, actually decades, with standing committees subject to the Brown Act. It's not anything new. I've been here when committees met with, Lynn was here as a nurse when there were, I think, 7 members, counting the 2 board members on the planning committee, 5 community members who could seemingly abide by the Brown Act. Or, if they, that same thing on the finance committee. I forget the exact number, but it was either 5 or 7, might have been greater than that at times. It included, members from the MEC on some of those committees too. So taking that away, I don't think, if a community member says that they won't participate in the planning committee because they have to follow the Brown Act, then I don't think that's somebody we want. This is taking away from basic transparency. That person can send emails, texts, call on the phone to board members all they want to. Notwithstanding Mr. Ramos's, kind of out of the box position on the foundation, that's a separate issue. And I don't even think it's appropriate to have brought up the name of an individual from the board about that. What the proposed change implies is that these standing committees cannot function under the watchfulness of the rest of the public, that community members can only contribute to a committee if they are allowed to gather in secret, then bring ideas to the committee. This flies in the face not only of the long-standing practice, but this very chair's claims that this board, this district, will conduct its business in the most transparent manner possible. Not only is the chair prejudiced the consideration of changes, well, I've already gone through that, so I don't have to read what I wrote about it. Also, I want to say that in reading through the board bylaws, there are numerous references to a, quote, general manager, unquote. There is no such position. In regard to the powers enumerated to the chair, since we're talking about the bylaws, there are far too many. It kind of relates to this, too, with some misplaced, others seemingly stripped from other officers of the board. For instance, the power to rule on parliamentary procedure should at least contain language such as, quote or semi-quote, with input from staff and a majority of the board members. In the past, the board treasurer and CFO have been the initial liaisons with auditors, not the chair. The chair, having sole direct contact with board counsel, is a touchy, potentially contentious, and problematic power. The history of this being in the board bylaws stems from the 2015 through 2018 board, in which this aspect of chair power was instituted because the then hospital CEO did not like some of the questions a particular board member was bringing to legal counsel. Thus, they passed by a not unanimous vote the rule that all requests from individual board members have to go through the chair before they go to legal counsel. Well, that creates an obvious problem if a individual board member has a question about the actions of this chair or a future chair. You have to send that through the chair in question. It doesn't make any sense. That's something that needs to be taken out of the bylaws. I think that, and the powers of the chair has mentions of a general manager in it too. You guys need to be reopening the bylaws and
Okay,
going
that's-
through them.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Do you have any more comments on this particular item? Okay, let's go to board discussion now.
I tend to agree with what you just said about the power of the chair. The chair is the chair, not the leader. And you can't use, I don't think it's fair to use the power of the chair for leadership. I mean, there's a distinction. You have to earn leadership through idea generation and respect. And I respect, and I have supported Paul for as long as he's been on the board. I've been his strongest support, I think his strongest vocal supporter. So this is not about Paul. This is about the general position of the chair and the chair's power going forward. I'd also want to comment that I was looking in the bylaws for when the chairperson and the officers are for what the length of their term is. Generally, not generally, but oftentimes, there's a rotation of the chair to eliminate the possibility of collection of power through knowledge. The chair generally has the most knowledge. Now, there's a positive part to that, which is experience, and we have to respect the accumulation of knowledge because it really is helpful. I mean, obviously, Malcolm's knowledge has been really helpful to us. When he's not criticizing us, he's helping us. And when he's criticizing us, oftentimes he is helping us as well. So I've been very concerned in my experiences in community organizing, just to watch, for example, how a city manager who doesn't rotate because it's his job becomes more powerful than any individual city councilman. And the same at the Board of Supervisors and every other kind of organization like that, when there is a staff person or somebody who's staying while everybody else is rotating. So I hear what you're saying, and I think the bylaws should have a kind of rotation experience in this. Anyway, I think I've made my point.
Director McGordy?
Yeah, we're looking at this one section about the planning committee in our
Are
bylaws.
you telling me I'm out of order?
No, I'm saying that this is what we're focusing on, and I understand, well, you're responding to a public comment, which we don't need to do, even though
I
it may
need
have
to
good
do.
ideas. And it's true that in our bylaws, we don't rotate the chair, but that's really not the item under discussion at the moment. It's changing or amending the standing committee of the planning committee particularly.
Jen, give me a break. I mean, we're human beings here, and we have dialogue. We have a member of the public who made a statement that was pretty profound, and to not respond and to recognize the public on the basis of some kind of procedure doesn't make a lot of sense to me as a human being.
Well, the
So
point is that.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I mean, I made my point.
Okay,
and
thank you. The point is that the position of the chair isn't under discussion.
That's
I
okay.
mean, we could have
It
that
is
at
now.
another time.
It is now.
Right.
It happened. You can't take away what happened.
Director Savage?
Okay, I have two thoughts. One of them is that having worked on bylaws like for forever, it feels like.
You're the one.
That the document is a living document, always subject to change and revision. And I think that the process, at least what we were doing before, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that if the body would like us to take a look at the role of the chair and reevaluate that language, that what we did before was we had an ad hoc committee of the two of us to go over the existing language and do the homework and come back with a recommendation. And maybe that's what needs to happen in terms of the conversation about the role of the chair. I would like to also, though, talk about this language because I'm really having a hard time with it. I really am. Because it says that the existing language and up to 6 community people. So it's up to the board how many, just no more than 6. It could be 1, it could be 2. But to have people with an investment, not just showing up to a meeting, but being an ongoing, functioning part of the committee as we make some really important decisions. And that we would be establishing what the criteria and what we expect out of those community people, so that the Brown Act is part of the conversation. And it doesn't mean you can't talk to your neighbors. It means that you shouldn't be talking about things that have to do with the functioning of their committee. They can go talk about the weather or Little League or whatever they want to talk about, just not talking about other things that turn into serial conversations. So I'm concerned about giving us the platform for officially including a really important part of the input. And I haven't found, I'm really wanting to hear more compelling reason to eliminate that language because I'm just not sure that I'm hearing it yet. I really want to know more about what the thinking is because I'm uncomfortable.
Chair, maybe you could ask our board attorney to weigh in since he's on the line.
Okay, yes, okay. Mr. Steele?
It's okay.
Yeah, he's still
You
muted.
didn't hear it.
Mr. Steele?
Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute. I don't have much to add other than what has been said already. The concern was that adding members of the public or appointing members of the public to a standing committee subjected those members to the Brown Act requirements, and apparently folks who have been approached to be on these standing committees were reluctant to be bound by the Brown Act. I don't think there's any effort to decrease transparency. These will still be open meetings, and public participation will be encouraged. The question is whether public members who are not now subject to the Brown Act in their individual capacities or in the capacities of other organizations they represent want to be covered by the Brown Act by virtue of taking these positions. As I also understood it, there had been some difficulty in recruiting members for these committees for these reasons. So I think staff has laid out the reason for the proposal. It's certainly up to the board, but I do want to emphasize that these changes don't change the fact that people will be able to come to these committee meetings and participate fully. And since they're essentially advisory committees, the board is making these decisions. Ultimately, the agency issue is really agency in a recommendation, not agency in a final decision of the district.
Board,
Yeah,
can I
yes,
make
go
a
ahead.
statement? You know, when situations like this have come up in my life, in my organizing world, I look to institutions that, or for example, instead of having selecting individuals, perhaps you select somebody. How can I say this? You create a position on the planning committee for an institution, and they send somebody to fill that spot. So if you want to have somebody if you want to have broad representation, maybe somebody from the Latino community, maybe LATCO has a position. Maybe Rotary fills one of the positions. Maybe Little League fills one of those positions. So and that's you smile, but that's part of our community. So maybe you want to think about providing positions on the board for the institutions in our community.
You mean the committee?
On the committee, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what you're talking about is, what I understand is a concilio model.
A what?
A
Concilio.
concilio model, it's a council.
If I could add one practical issue that might address what Susan's concerns are, if you have a community member who's a member of say the planning committee, and we're starting to talk about real estate, or we're starting to talk about retrofit, whatever it is, that member who talks to those two board members, the the standing planning, that community member cannot talk to the other three board members. That's the bound that we're trying to eliminate. We want that community member to be able to talk to every single board member. We don't want a circular meeting, of course, but we want that person to be able to communicate with board members. And if they're a Community Brown Act participant, they can't do that. That was the issue that we saw. And that's what this is actually trying to eliminate.
So they would not be able to be a member of the public at a meeting and speak to the whole board.
They can be a member of the committee, right? So right now, we actually have appointed community members to the planning, or tentatively. So Terry Ramos is there. Sorry, Terry. Terry can't go. Terry can talk to the two planning committee members, but he can't go talk to the other three. And if it's something where he's trying to get information or, give information, he can't do that under the Brown Act. He would be just as bound as if he was a board member like you. That's what we're trying to eliminate.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the purpose of the Brown Act is, as much as possible, as I understand it, is to have as many of those conversations as possible in front of the public, where the public has an opportunity
Yes.
to hear, to be a part of those conversations.
Yeah. And none of that would change?
Well, no, because actually what you just said is that what you're looking to do is to facilitate out of public view conversations.
No.
That's not what I said. I said that you're limiting
Because
gonna-
let's not pick on Terry anymore. But if there is an individual,
Yes,
anybody can say anything, my understanding is, in a fully agendized, open public meeting.
correct.
Correct. Where the Brown Act comes in is a prohibition against,
Committee members,
well, and we'd have to figure out how many members there are and what a voting majority is of whatever body this is, that they're having off-screen conversations the public is not a part of.
committee members cannot do that. That is correct.
Correct. And that's the purpose of the Brown Act, is to minimize the out of the public view conversations and encourage, if not require, those conversations to take place in public.
Yes, and that's what the two board members are bound under, right?
Well, but if we have appointed members, if I understand our existing language, we have appointed members who are then a part of that body, then they are also bound by the Brown Act as well.
Correct.
So conversations, if you're a voting member of this committee, then those conversations with those people are open to the public.
If you're having the conversation in the meeting
You
itself.
can have a conversation in the meeting, they just cannot they can't act independently, right? Because they're suddenly a member of a committee that's a Brown Act committee. So they can only discuss in public with the two board members. So it actually limits who they can talk to.
But I think that's the intent of the Brown Act, is to bring things into the public. And what I'm troubled by is it feels to me that what we're trying to do is facilitate conversations out of the public view.
No.
And maybe that's exactly what it is that we need to do, so that the information can be shared more freely, but I'm having a problem.
Director McGorty.
Help me.
So, I don't see where you get the idea that it's out of the public eye, because all of standing committee, Brown Act committees are agendized and posted, and they're open to the public and everybody participates. What I found was that a standing committee here is, I was told, because I had all these great plans on what the planning committee was going to do. No, we can only look at facilities and maintenance. And it's like, no, we have a lot of work to do with other stuff and the retrofit and all these other plans and stuff, and that's not the job of the planning committee.
But that has nothing to do with the Brown Act, and it has nothing to do with the members who are on that committee. What that has to do with, that may have to do with the charge and the definition.
Right.
And that's a whole other discussion, and I'm with you on that.
Right.
But what I'm trying to figure out, and if I'm the only person
You're
who's
not
worried
the
about
only
this.
one. You're not the only one.
Okay.
Keep going.
That if we have community members as voting members of this committee, then any conversation that, let's say this is a body of, how many people? Up to 6, 2 board members, so there's 8 people on this committee. So if 5 or more of them are present and talking about anything, it has to be properly agendized, because it's a voting majority of whatever body that is. That's why, for us, it's 3 people.
I think the danger is the serial meeting. I think that's the greater danger.
Well, possibly, but I'm just kind of defining what my worry is.
And I don't see that, it's an advisory committee, so I see the standing committee board members as facilitating discussion, not necessarily making decisions.
Or voting.
Oh, correct. However, it would be, to me, helpful that, particularly given the huge issues that the planning committee is dealing with, that we would want people with a certain amount of commitment who aren't just randomly showing up at the meeting, but they're a part of the committee, and it's an expectation that they're there because they're a part of making a recommendation to us for how we proceed.
No.
And to me, having members who have that commitment, who are going to be part of that committee and making that recommendation, is a good thing. And again, we have absolute flexibility. We could appoint nobody as community members and just let people show up. We could appoint 1, 2, 3. It says a maximum of 6 to give us the flexibility to do whatever feels appropriate at the time. And nothing restricts, like right now, if we eliminate that language, nothing restricts 100 people from showing up at that meeting.
Yeah, the
With
question,
existing language, nothing restricts who's going to come to that meeting and share their points of view.
In either case, there's no restriction. It's a public meeting, period.
Exactly. So this isn't changing that.
may I?
I want
ask
Lynn-
you-
I wanna
Hold it, look, Director Finley.
Well, I've had committees before where we had to have action items, where we had to have accomplishments. And what I found is if you don't have a defined group that is that core group,
Correct.
every time you have a meeting, new people show up, people don't show up, and you have to start all over again with the whole process of deciding things. So it is good to have a defined core group of community members and board members who actually are having that conversation and keeping that momentum going and not having to start from fresh every time you have a meeting.
May I? So,
Go ahead.
just to follow that, it stands, the next question that I would ask is, who are these people? And who is selecting these people? And what are the criteria for selecting the people who are going to be on the committee?
Well,
And what is, how does that work? Because you want a broad spectrum of working people who are digging in.
Okay, I understand that. The simple answer to that, before we get carried away with that, because I think it's important we try and contain this discussion a little bit. The simple answer is that the board appoints them. Okay? based on recommendations. It's the board who makes those appointments,
Okay,
okay?
yeah, that
But-
was the
but
answer to the
there's-
question. Very
But there's
good.
no process for people applying, it's just who you
Yeah.
want.
We don't have well, do you feel like we need a process for people to apply?
What's your experience then?
Well, I'm speaking from having, working in a hospital situation where it's, we're looking at different changes and different forms, paperwork, whatever. I always chose people from different shifts, so that shift had a representation. I would choose people from every line of work, whether it was a CNA, an RN, an LVN, respiratory therapist, physical therapy, anybody who had skin in the game. I always made sure there was somebody from that area that was part of that committee, and of every shift, because every shift has their own personality, to make sure that everybody was represented. So it's same as what you're talking about, is having the Latin community and looking at within the community who is out there that needs to be at the table to represent that community, that sub-community.
So do you then ask who would be interested, or do you just go pick them out?
I think you go to those different, in the situations I was in when I had to choose, I would go to the different groups to see if they were within that group, if they had somebody who would volunteer, or if they, as a group, that they felt would represent them well.
Okay, are we ready to move on this?
Is there any action item?
It is an action
Yeah, it
item,
is.
yes, it is.
Okay, can I ask a question about that then? Because there's a number, are we only going to be looking at Section 2A?
That's all
And
this
those,
agenda.
and we're not talking about the other one down?
Page 9 only, all those were lineouts.
Okay, so we need to talk about eliminating Measure C recommendation
Yeah,
from the
that was-
Finance Committee?
Yeah, there's no reason for a finance committee to perform oversight on an oversight committee, and that was added in error the last go-round.
We
I'm
put
not
that
sure
in there,
that that's
actually.
true. If I could make a comment?
Yeah.
Because my understanding, because, we were looking at a document that had references to all kinds of things all over everywhere, and we pulled it together to have everything that pertained to the role of the Finance Committee in one place. This is back when Lee and I were working on this. That the idea of leaving that language in there as a function for the Finance Committee is that somebody has to do the homework of taking a look at recommendations for how Measure C funds were going to be spent, so that something that had a little bit of that background would come to the board as a fully fleshed out proposal, that this is what was found out. Now, I don't know if that happens via staff.
Yeah, that
The-
procedure's obsolete. It should have been always that Measure C was oversight after the fact of the board approving monies. And for whatever reason, it got in front of the approval, it got in front of the recommend to the board Measure C. We've corrected that. You'll hear about it tonight in Peter's report. But Measure C is truly oversight. It's supposed to confirm that the board expenditures fit in that narrow Measure C guideline. So it's after the fact, not before the fact. And we have that corrected now. And that's why I believe that the oversight is done at the board level. You guys are the ones that are saying, yes, we approve these expenditures for capital expense. And Peter gives us guidelines that say, and I think all of these, for example, fit in Measure C. Measure C committee goes after the fact and says, yep, those all fit in Measure C or they don't, and we move the money accordingly.
Okay, I think there have been multiple times when we have asked for some kind of thorough explanation with some historic perspective on exactly the nature of how Measure C funds are used, because what you just said is not in accordance with what I had understood, and every time I think I understand it, I get it, and then somebody says something that's opposed to that. So
You
I
might
would
get your
encourage us-
answer tonight.
No, I think what
on
I would really
tonight's
like to
agenda.
do is just not deal with the striking out that language there, because that's a separate conversation that I think a clear understanding of what we want that process to look like would be helpful. And if we could just deal with Section 2,
That was your recommendation.
number A, and those strikeouts that you were recommending. That would be my suggestion, because it'll make it easier for us to be voting on one issue instead of two.
I'm still looking for a motion here.
Well, we're not done
Director
talking.
Finley?
Going back to originally when we first did the Measure C, the Measure C Oversight Committee was the first step to make sure that it fit the criteria of the Measure C language. And that was the first stop. And
Yeah,
and then they would come to the board with the recommend, or they would go to the Finance Committee, and would come back to the board with that these expenditures do fit the criteria. It was originally intended to be like the first stop, to make sure that the monies were being spent.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow what you said. It seemed like to me that you said it was the first stop and it wasn't the first stop.
Well, it went through them first to make sure that whatever was being proposed met the criteria. And then from there, it went to the board
For approval.
for approval.
You know, well, okay, but with Measure C defines certain types of things that can be done on the facility that can be reimbursed from that particular account.
Right.
Okay, right. That doesn't, but there are other things that may happen that may not be reimbursed. The board still has to act on those.
Right.
So Measure C is a narrower parameter of things that the
Right.
board may have to, that
Right.
we have to do to maintain the facility.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
But they were the first ones who could look at it as far as, does this meet the Measure C parameters and language? And then these are the funds that we can spend under Measure C. But yes, there's bigger pictures, the bigger things we have to spend money on, which is a whole different subject.
Well, I think they're very much connected. I don't think they're, I think if we come up with $5 million of things that have to be done in the hospital, and without that, the hospital won't remain open. It's our responsibility to do that, get that done so that the hospital remains open.
Right, and I'm not arguing
Of that, maybe $3 or $4 million is Measure C, and maybe it's not. Perhaps not all 5 of it.
So my understanding is that there's a certain amount that you can spend. And that was my thought too, that at first it goes to Measure C to see if it's authorized by Measure C, and then it goes to the board, because we may not be able to provide everything that is needed, but we can prioritize the Measure C things because the money is designated by Measure C.
It's not saying that we
No,
can't
no,
spend
okay.
money on
Point of
the other things that are
information.
needed.
I think, look.
Just remember that everything is discretionary.
What we have here, creating that kind of a situation, something needs to be done at the hospital, okay? So Measure C meets how often? Once a quarter?
Quarterly.
So we have to wait for that to happen, then we have to bring it back to the board. Why aren't we doing that if we need it to be done, and the board can see that it needs to be done, and we have the recommendation, why can't we just do it?
May I?
Can I ask a point of
Wait,
information?
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What we're doing right now is having the conversation about how Measure C is structured. And I think my suggestion would be that if we're going to have that conversation, then have Jim or whoever it is here and could have that full conversation of here's the original language of the initiative, here's how it has been. We may decide that we want to do it completely differently, but we need to have that conversation. And for me, right now, removing that from the
Okay.
Finance Committee if I could finish, that removing that from the roles of the Finance Committee is premature until we have the discussion that we're starting to have here, but without, I think, some significant input. And so my suggestion is, unless there's some time-sensitive reason that we have to decide tonight to strike that language, my suggestion is, let's not vote on that part because it involves much more.
Okay.
So
okay.
just to move forward.
Okay, fine, I understand. So.
And that
we
would
have a
be
motion?
if you want a motion to that.
No, I just have one point I want to make before a motion. Do I have the floor?
Yes.
Thank
of
you.
course.
In my conversations, public conversations with Wayne, I have asked him 2 or 3 times, what's the difference between discretionary money and non-discretionary money? Discretionary money being dedicated to something. And Wayne has answered every single time, all the money is discretionary. Now, he's here, he can, correct me if he did not say that, but he has said that, and I will argue that point. But the reason, because what Paul said was what he's trying, he sees, what happens if there's a lag in an emergency, right? He's trying to deal with that, with a very practical thing. Now, I'm just saying to you that regardless of all these procedures that tie you up into knots and make it not understandable by anybody, the important thing is, how do we deal with money? And if we're tied up in knots because we think this money has to go here and this money has to go there, when our CFO has said all the money is discretionary, then Paul, I thought, or what he brought up is essential to know that all the money is discretionary, and that if there is something that is essential, we got to take the risk of doing it to save lives, and then suffer the consequences if it just doesn't fit in exactly. But we have the right to do that because all the money, according to our CFO, is discretionary money that we can spend on what we want. So I just wanted to have that clarity. Now, Wayne is up there. He can tell us if what I just said was right or not right. Wayne, you're on.
Paul,
Yes?
it's discretionary, but you have to follow business principles. You can't go out and spend money on spend money on a circus or something or whatever. So
Please deal with the concept of emergency and taking what Chairman Garza brought up was an important point, and I'm just trying to get some clarity on whether he has and we have the option to solve problems immediately, and take the risk of possibly having to have egg on our face, but at least we solved the problem that was immediate. What do you think?
You have to balance that though with other priorities. If that's arisen, what you're describing, if you've got a priority that you think is number one, and somebody else that thinks they got one that's a number one, to make sure you got to do it within priorities, rank them and so forth. And we're coming up on a very serious situation with the downsizing of the federal government and probably some payer programs and so forth. It's going to be a lot of internal, that's already happening, internal downsizing in healthcare. And that's going to change the landscape quite a bit. And we've got to make sure we stay on top of that with the right priorities.
Of course.
And one of them has got to be how we modernize this healthcare system, the building, or if we don't modernize it. Adventist Health is going to be putting in rent payment of $3 million per year. So for the next 15 years, that, adds up to, 30, let's see, let me add it up, 36 million for 10, another 12, 8, 54 million for 15 years. If I'm Adventist Health, I want my priority to be number one. I don't, they need to define that, describe that. So everything has to be balanced. Say to say you have discretionary funds, yeah, but if you go off and spend them on something foolish that's not priority, then no, that doesn't work, so.
Can we bring this back to the
Yeah, I'd
discussion on
like to.
bylaws, please?
Yes,
We've
yes.
gone all over the universe.
Right.
Okay, I have a motion.
Yeah, okay, let me, Director McGordy, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can take these points one at a time for the planning committee.
Agreed.
So I move that we eliminate the point where it says recommending and overseeing human resource policies, compensation, and benefits.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. Any comments from the board members? Hearing none? Okay, roll call, please.
I got excited. Okay, shoot, where were we? Okay, Lynn Finley,
Yes.
Paul Garza,
Yes?
Paul Katzif,
I don't know, so I'm gonna just pass.
did you want to abstain or
Yeah,
come back to
I'm
you?
gonna abstain. That's not a negative.
Okay, got it.
That's a
Okay, Jan
confusion.
McGordy
Yes,
and Susan Savage, yes. So what we just did is we eliminated the third bullet in
Right.
section 2A, standing committees.
okay. So now I'd like to move that we have the planning committee composed only of 2 board members and no community members. We'll just see how that goes.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, well, I'll second for purposes of moving it so we can vote on it.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, roll call?
okay. Paul Katzif,
No.
Jan McGordy.
Let me think.
Would you like me to come back to you?
Yes.
Okay. Susan Savage, no. Lynn Finley,
No.
Paul Garza.
Well, it's mute now, so.
Well, but you still have a voice.
We wanna know your point of view.
We still need to capture the
Okay,
vote of all
I
members.
would vote yes for it, but.
I'm
yeah,
sorry?
but-
What Norma
Okay.
just said
I'll
something,
vote
I didn't
yes.
hear what she said.
Yes, Secretary Savage is right. We still need to capture the vote of all members.
Okay, yes. Okay, go
I'll
ahead.
say yes.
Okay, okay, so Paul Garza says yes, Jan McGordy says yes.
And it's
Okay, so the motion fails.
Well, it's 2-2 unless.
No, it's 3.
No, it's 3 to 4,
Oh,
or
did
3 to
Paul
2.
vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
No.
okay, fine.
Yes, he
Okay,
did.
let's
Yes.
go on.
Okay,
Okay, and then finally, I'd like to move that we strike recommending community members as appropriate for board appointment to the planning committee.
Say that again?
It's the
the fourth bullet.
Fourth point, just strike the 4th point, just so we can vote on it.
Didn't we just do that?
No, we just voted on whether or not we were going to strike the section at the top on up to 6 members.
Oh, okay, up to 6.
So now we're down to the 4th bullet,
Oh, okay, fine, okay.
which is Jan's motion, still waiting for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, any
So
discussion?
to be
or-
clear on this
Discussion.
motion, by removing this item is taking the action of the board saying that recommending community members would not be for the board to make that appointment.
It
So
would
who's
not be
making
for
that
the
appointment?
standing, it would not be one of the functions of the standing committee. Currently, right now, the bylaws list that recommending community members is one of the jobs of the standing committee.
So it's saying they wouldn't make recommendations.
Correct.
It's
The board still
holding
makes the
that line
appointment.
out.
We're
It's
striking
holding
that.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
holding that last line
Okay.
out.
Just want to make sure it was very clear, because I know the deliberation included who makes the appointment, what is that process? So just making it very clear what this, if striked, if this motion passes, what does that mean? It means that the standing committee does not make recommendations for the board to appoint the members.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, can we have discussion on this issue?
Of course.
Okay, because I would like to say,
We do
to
have a
me,
second. We do have a, oh, yes, we have a second. Okay,
yes, we do, Lynn seconded, okay.
Go ahead.
It makes no sense to me why you wouldn't want a standing committee to have any role in recommending community members? Since you're not striking the fact that we might have community members, why wouldn't you want the standing committee to have the invitation, if you will, to recommend to the board who ultimately appoints? Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Because.
And I understand that if we're striking that language up at the top, then certainly you'd want to eliminate that language, but that's not what we just voted to do.
I would say that it depends on the broad nature of the mindset of the two board members. Do they have a sufficient scope, sufficient as the whole board? So I thought my voice was loud enough, but maybe it isn't. So there's more scope when the entire board, including the two planning members, vote together. And so we would need another bullet point to say how this is done if we eliminated this. I don't believe that there's enough, that the two board members would make the kind of decision that I would want. So I would be eliminated from making a recommendation. And I'm a board member, and then I'm going to have to deal with a planning committee that doesn't have perhaps anybody on the planning committee that represents the points of view that I have. I would say that every board member should be able to make a single recommendation.
Well, you absolutely always have the right to make recommendations for committees.
Well,
That doesn't mean that the board would agree with them. But
That's right.
But you have the right at any time to recommend them. Yes, Susan?
Okay. This says that not that this committee exclusively makes recommendations.
Right.
It means that one of its jobs is to make recommendations to the board, and it's the board that appoints. And at any meeting, the planning committee or the standing, or one of the committees recommends these community members. Any member of the board, when that's on the agenda, could recommend additional people or vote against the recommendation of the standing committee. It's all, the board has to ultimately decide who's going to be appointed and who isn't, not the standing committee. This just encourages, because it says that one of their purposes and jobs would be to recommend community members so that that function doesn't get dumped solely on the board, that it's the board's job to go out there and recruit and find people and
Okay,
appoint
but
them.
think about the politics of it. Not Machiavellian politics, but think about the politics of voting. You have recommendations coming from two board members. Now,
From the full committee, not from board members, because that
From-
committee
Right.
could be up to 6 people.
but we haven't decided that yet.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
We
Yeah, we
did
did.
not, we
So
voted
we-
to not eliminate the language that allows the board, us, to appoint up to 6 community people to that board, to that standing committee.
Up to 6.
Up to 6
Up to
is what
So
the
there could be
existing language
eight
says.
people coming up with a recommendation to bring to the board.
Right.
There's a procedural point that has to be brought up here. The agenda only had, adopt amended board bylaws. The board has now broken this up into separate voting sections. Therefore, the community should have input on each one of these separate items.
Which might be helpful.
Norma?
So what I think I heard was, since the board is making individual motions, the person who is commenting on the floor says that the public should have the ability to speak on each of these motions. These were brought forward as the staff report as a whole. An opportunity was given to the public to speak on the bylaws as a whole. If the public wanted to use their 5 minutes to speak on the individual items before them, they could have done that. You do not need to open the floor again because there's nothing new that has been presented that would constitute a new open public comment time.
Norma, the agenda.
We will not argue with our, you're out of order. We are not going to argue with our experts.
Why not? She's been
She's,
all-
I think
you're
I
out
do
of
want to
order.
point out, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I thought maybe I cut out. I do want to go back to Director Ketzoff and Secretary Savage's comments. As I specifically had asked, let's make sure that we are understanding what this motion is on the floor, what we are going to be discussing, not we, me, but you all deliberating, discussing, and voting on. Is Secretary Savage is correct in how that discussion is, or how the motion is laid on the floor right now. So Ketzoff, if I can kind of help maybe provide some of that clarity and add in addition to Secretary Savage's comments, is that the Planning Commission applications, or however the names coming forward for consideration. So let's say you get 5 applications for consideration to appoint 3 members or 2 members onto the Planning Commission, right? Or Planning Committee. The Planning Committee takes those applications or those names of interest, resumes, however that information comes in, considers those 5 qualified candidates to see if they are qualified, and brings forward to the full 5-member board who they recommend. They recommend applicant 3 and applicant 4. It is then up to the board to say, we will either take this recommendation and we agree and we're going to appoint applicant 3 and 4, or the whole board, all 5 members, again, all 5 members, get to vote on, we want number 1 and 5. We want number 2 and 3. So you do not lose your vote. You do not lose the opportunity to make the appointment. The Planning Committee is bringing in all of those members, so the citizens and the committee members, right, would be the 2 board members. They're making a recommendation, like how Kathy has tonight presented her staff reports and made a recommendation on what they think is the best action to move forward, but the board has a right to make a change to that recommendation and to move forward with how they want. So you don't lose your voice. It's a recommendation only. It is not the actual appointment. The board of 5 members are making the actual appointment. Does that clarify what you were speaking about, Director Ketzoff?
It clarifies, absolutely clarifies. So,
Okay.
But let me just, there's a little piece here that I want to explore quickly. So if a board member has somebody in mind that they want in advance of the vetting process, that board member would then recommend that person to the planning group, committee, and they would have to do the vetting, or they would do the vetting according to how they're vetting everybody. So that person would not be eliminated from the entire board voting on them. Or is there an elimination process? We're going to get this down. We have 15 people. We're going to get this down to 5, and the planning committee gets to winnow it down. How does that work? That's all I'm interested in. Because
Director McGordy.
I think part of the problem is I don't think we have an application process. So if we had an application process, then we could hand them out to all our friends and they could fill them out, and the planning committee could go through the stack and make recommendations, but the rest of the board could look at the whole stack and make their own recommendation. But we don't have that process in place, from what I understand.
Yeah, we don't have anything in place. So, in point of fact, these committees, we're spending an awful lot of time on them, and I'm not saying it's not
We have a
appropriate
motion
at this
on the floor,
point.
too.
But however, these committees have not met historically. Go. Director Savage.
Not necessarily dealing with standing committees. However, we have had precedent that when we needed to establish a procedure for how we were going to go about doing a particular thing, like filling a vacancy on this board, for instance, that there was a recommendation that was made, that was voted on and adopted by the full board for how we would proceed. And since we don't have language in the bylaws, unless we wanted to institute some language in the bylaws, which would be my least favorite, so that would not give us the flexibility to do things differently given different circumstances, that it makes sense to me that the board would adopt, in the case of these seats, how would we like these to be filled? Do we want applications? Do we want letters of interest? What do we want? And how would we proceed, that should be outlined before we go into it. The only issue before us right now is whether or not we want the standing committee itself to make recommendations, which the board has the power to accept, reject, add different people. There's nothing that prohibits the board from doing something different. This is just a recommendation.
And I'd like to call for the question.
Okay.
Could you please restate that motion one more time?
It would be to strike,
Jan made it and Lynn seconded.
Yeah, I'm going to
to strike
rescind my
the
second.
fourth point.
And she just withdrew her second.
You did?
Okay, so,
I think we should leave the language in there.
I know, but we're going to
So,
vote on it, so
at
we can
this
get
time, the
another
motion is on the
second.
floor. It has been
Okay.
given to the full board. If you want to leave the language in there, very respectfully, you just vote no.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're going to keep your
So to
second?
read the motion again?
Yeah,
Okay, so let me go back. So moved by
keep it.
Jan, seconded by Lynn to remove the language in the fourth bullet from
so it's to
section
keep the line out?
2A.
To keep the line out as presented?
Yeah, but we're
strike it.
moving, what we're doing is we're amending the bylaws. So what the motion is to remove that fourth bullet, which is what your recommendation is.
Okay, thank you. Keep the line out.
A motion to strike the language under section 2, standing committees, planning paragraph, the language of the fourth bullet, recommending community members as appropriate for board appointment to the planning committee will be striked.
No, that wasn't the motion. The motion was to keep it and strike out the
That's what I'm
line
trying to
through it.
figure out. That's the opposite of what.
And to strike out the line through it.
Hold it,
Perfect.
because I had
Okay,
understood
so,
that you
okay.
wanted to eliminate the ability, and that's why I spoke to the
I'm
motion to
sorry.
begin with.
I
Yeah.
think we had some confusion here.
Yes.
That's been a 15-minute discussion that,
Longer than
okay,
that.
was interesting. So let's,
Okay, what is Jan's
so I
motion?
think we can we just move that we
Keep,
we retain this
It-
recommendation?
we retain,
We retain the recommendation of community members as appropriate for board appointment to the planning committee.
yes.
Well, then,
Is that a motion?
Well, that's the motion I don't
well,
wanna
you've
make
got
a
a motion on the
competing
floor
motion.
already, so my suggestion is if Jan could clarify what your motion is, Lynn could clarify that that was what she intended to second, and we can go ahead and vote.
Okay,
Yeah, we can-
so yes, it's to take off the strike and keep recommending community
Got
members.
it. Okay.
Yes, and I'll keep my second.
Secretary Savage, I heard it the same way you did too.
Now we have a second here.
Yes.
Okay, now can we go to roll call, please?
Yes, we can. Okay, Jan McGorty,
Yes,
yes. Susan Savage, yes. Lynn Finley,
I agree to keep that language in there, yes.
yes. And Paul Garza.
Yes.
And Paul Katzub.
Yes.
Okay, hallelujah. So we are maintaining that
Number
fourth
four.
bullet.
Okay, so are we now finished with our discussion of,
What are you going to do with finance?
we're going to table it for later, right?
okay, so let's, we want to defer the Measure C committee recommendations.
No, I have a
No,
question. You
it
didn't
has to do
handle the
with
6
community members.
community members at the top.
Yeah, we did.
No.
Noel, we did it with
You
first the
voted on
standing
planning.
committee.
You didn't vote on the finance.
Okay, so let's have a motion to,
Oh.
can I ask for a motion to retain 6 community members on the finance committee? Somebody want to make that?
I would move that.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Okay. Looks like me. Susan Savage, yes. Lynn Finley,
Yes.
Paul Garza,
Yes?
Paul Katzub,
Yes.
and Jan McGorty.
Yes,
Okay, so we've retained that language.
Okay, so I believe we concluded our discussion of bylaws for this evening. Thank you.
Hey.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Norma, for your guidance. Okay, let's go to my chair's report. There are really only 2 items here we've already dealt with, the other one. I want to bring to everybody's attention the significant threat. Okay, the board will now hear reports from various agencies that are information only. Public comments will be welcome when all reports have concluded. Again, there's a 20-minute total time limit for this portion of the agenda. Each presenter is allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Okay. We have a significant threat potentially, I don't want to create the kind of panic that we've experienced already in this community too many times, but a potentially serious threat for the potential future of our hospital. And that comes from the proposal for cuts in federal spending. Now, yesterday, the House adopted a budget resolution that eliminated all Medicare funding and all funding for SNAP. That's food program, that's food stamps, and a number of other things. It serves school lunches, a whole lot of things, all right? So that's on the record. Our hospital receives, like nearly every rural hospital in this country, a large portion of its reimbursement for services from Medicare and Medicaid. Now, while there are pledges from the current administration that no reductions will occur to Medicare, at least the program for seniors, no such pledges obviously have been made regarding Medicaid. This is the program, again, that serves low-income people and disabled individuals. It's important to recognize that California's Medi-Cal program is funded 60% by federal funds. It's actually Medicaid, 60%. This may seem high, but most states in the United States actually receive 80% of their reimbursement for their state funding from the federal government. It is estimated that the termination of Medicaid could cost California overall $100 billion. California's Medi-Cal program and state resources will obviously not be able to cover such a reduction. Our hospital receives 78% of its reimbursement from Medicare, Medicaid, and Medi-Cal. Therefore, any reduction in the funding of Medicare, Medicaid at the federal level is a serious threat to the future viability of the hospital. Based on that, I'm going to urge all citizens of our community to learn more and to voice your concerns to federal elected officials. We are putting information analysis from nonpartisan sources on our website now. It's on the page, and you can pull that down and continue to study. We'll continue to provide updates on this. This is going to be very, very important. We currently have information from the American Hospital Association, the California Health Care Foundation, and other sources. And like I say, we will continue to track this very closely. But if you're interested in the future of healthcare in this community and in our hospital, please follow this. I will only make one more comment that the estimated economic impact of this hospital on our community is between $120 and $150 million a year. If you can imagine what this community would be like if it misses that. So we not only have the issue of access to care for our community, but also the viability of the local economy. So it's important that you stay up to date on this. Secondly, the other thing I want to just mention is that Adventist Health has gone through a very substantial leadership change in our region. Most significantly, Mr. Jeff Mock, who was formerly the Chief Financial Officer for the region, has now been appointed to I believe, Mr. Johnson, if I'm wrong with his title, please correct me, Chief Operations Officer?
He's the Operations Executive.
Okay, Chief Operations Executive, thank you, for the region. I stand corrected. While transitions like this can often take some time to work through, I would observe that communication between the district and Adventist Health has significantly improved quite rapidly since this change. And we are certainly hopeful that this communication will continue and grow. Okay. With that, I've concluded my remarks. Let me turn to Ms. Wiley.
Yeah, may I just mention that Jeff Mock could not be here tonight. He plans to make regular presentations to the board here. He's on a plane tonight, and so he will join us next month.
Okay, and then no one has pinch hitting for him.
Not tonight, no,
Okay,
no,
that's
not
fine,
tonight.
That's fine. I just don't want to, just in case I miss something.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And then on my, thank you for the opportunity to report on happenings in the district. The March meetings are at the top of my report. You'll see March 10th is the tentative meeting for planning. And March 17 is scheduled for a Measure C Oversight Committee meeting. March 27th is the next regular board meeting. I wanted to point out and show you the new MERTS ambulance that was purchased for through district funds for $218,994, bringing that to 5 ambulances in service. And just so you know that 2 are on duty 24/7 with others activated as needed. And thanks to the property taxpayers of the district for funding that. I also wanted to report that we did go ahead and sell the 2 ambulances that were surplused through govdeals.com. The total price for the 2 was $8,653, and we'll be receiving those checks in the next few weeks and depositing them into the Tri-County's account. You have already talked about the board mission statement, but
Before you go on, just for entertainment purposes, I understand there was a unique use that someone was going to make of one of the ambulances.
that buyer ended up not buying. Both ambulances ended up going in, I believe, into service as ambulances. The first buyer was going to make a hair salon out of one of them.
That was an interesting concept.
You'll see later that you are being asked to adopt the board mission statement that the board worked on at our special workshop on February 17th. I've listed that here for you. The board mission statement proposed is that MCHCD provides a hospital and fosters leadership, advocacy, trying to get my windows out of the way.
Collaboration.
Thank you. For our community health and well-being. And Director Savage brought up that in the context of this, that we offer the vision statement. And so I listed that here for you, and that's for discussion later on in the agenda. I wanted to mention that the Friends of Health is putting on a end of life workshop. Last check, there were only about 30 slots left. That's being held on April 5th at the Casper Community Center, and there's information in my report about how to sign up if you'd like to attend. I've been working still on the community outreach idea, and I wanted to, essentially we've been looking at other healthcare districts and how they're reaching out to the public, and they reach out in mainly 3 categories of events, classes, and or sponsorships. Director Finley will be asking the board to consider formation of an ad hoc committee with a goal of increasing community engagement by uniting community organization to understand their roles and needs and identify service funding or staffing, etc. You'll hear about that at the end of the meeting today. I was directed to bring back information on the Public Records Act request, and I wanted to let you know that's ongoing, and I'll issue a report as soon as it's available. Facilities planning, you saw that we're going to try and meet March 10th and continue on with the seismic retrofit plans, etc. I did a rather lengthy article or summary report. I met in a Cal Matters Zoom meeting 2 days ago, yesterday, and it was about the problems with maternity care delivery in the state of California. I know it's been an ongoing and contentious issue in our community, and I encourage you to read the highlights, at least of this report. It's grim, and there are a lot of issues around it, and there are several organizations trying to address how to get more maternity care. And the idea of doulas is a very current hot topic. So please take a moment to read that report. And then as Chair Garza mentioned, there are threats to Medicare and Medicaid on 2 tracks. Even though that was passed in the Senate, the bill is not final. Both chambers have to negotiate a compromise. And the government funding deadline is March 14th. And again, there are some reports that give further information linked in my report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, it's, the March 14th date is critical because if there is not legislation continuing legislation, that the government shuts down.
Should our district write a letter to our Congressman?
I have already communicated something to Congressman Huffman. We could certainly, but we can do more. I don't think that it shouldn't be a one-off. What I shared with him was kind of a little bit of what I shared with all of you, is that there's the dual sides of it, of, access to healthcare, which should be actually absolutely critical to all of us, and that's a major reason why all of us are on the board. But I also can't help but, by instinct, use my economic development background to say, wow, this could, you can imagine the impact on small businesses in this community. I mean, it'd just be, it would, anyway. I don't want to get into it too hard. But yeah, I think if the board wants to adopt, we have to be a little bit careful, but we can certainly inform and educate and raise our concerns.
By how?
Letters.
Individual members?
And
you mean?
individuals, we will make information available to people. We can do that. As I know that you're interested in, I think it's time for us to join certain types of organizations that will be active in this process of advocacy. There are a whole lot of things that can be done, and I think we need to do them. We've spent so much time working hard on this hospital. Wow. Anyway, yeah, the director said.
Well, I don't know if anybody else was on, there was a conference call with our congressman just the other night.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said repeatedly, and there were a zillion different problems that people were bringing up as a result of what's going on in Washington, that he kept saying over and over again that what really matters is public opinion, and that what he also said is what's really helpful to him as a congressman is anecdotal stories about this is what it means in Mendocino County. Here's what's happening, because then he can use that in conversations with other legislators and also with other potential partners in this. So a letter from us that would include what specifically this means here might be helpful.
Okay. So let me, if I could summarize this, I'll direct staff to draft that letter, and let's get it ready to go. And then we'll have to figure out a way to get a board check through that. But I think it would be very important. One of the things I did share with him, Director Savage, and I think something worth repeating, because the key to this is going to be changing votes on one side of the House. Yesterday, the first time ever, or at least in recent history, every Democrat in the House voted on to oppose the resolution. That was quite extraordinary. So we know where the votes have to be shifted going forward, is to talk about the 703 hospitals that are already at risk, 703 rural hospitals in the United States that are already at risk. And we're not included in that list, by the way. And so they will all go under, plus potentially, plus whatever. Anyway, this. Okay, if we can move on to new business now. Thank you.
Public comment for reports, please, sir?
Oh, yes, sorry. Public comments on reports. Mr. McDonald.
So while I would agree with the general tone of the chair's comments about, yes, obviously there's a big problem nationally, but maybe it's the reporter side of me. I would recommend against, and it's probably one of the reasons that we have this administration instead of a Harris administration. I'll prefer things like the New York Times and the healthcaredive.com, which is kind of something like a AAA version of Becker's, or another version, I don't want to diminish it, which wrote, House Republicans on Tuesday took the first step toward potentially cutting Medicaid, passing a budget blueprint resolution that calls for $880 billion in spending cuts from the agency that oversees Medicaid, essentially. Although the budget resolution does not mention Medicaid specifically, lawmakers would be hard-pressed to find cuts sufficient enough to meet its targets without touching Medicare or Medicaid. If the Energy and Commerce Committee, the committee tasked with finding $880 billion in savings, their emphasis, I just read it emphatically, cut everything that's not healthcare related, the committee would still be short $600 billion, according to a report in the New York Times. So far be it from me to defend Mike Johnson, but you need to stick to the actual facts until it happens. Trump has, made statements that he wouldn't touch Medicare, but he doesn't like Medicaid because of the alleged fraud, et cetera. And, it may end up that they cut, huge chunks of Medicaid and Medicare, but that isn't what has actually happened yet. So, and I want to reiterate that last paragraph of the chair's report is an inappropriate message to fellow board members, a written message prior to a meeting in which there's an action item. That is not something a chair should do for something that's going to be an action item. You don't put your foot down on one side or the other of an action item in public, in print, beforehand. I hope you're listening to that, Mr. Garza. You didn't the last time I mentioned it.
What are you referring to?
Yeah, thank you for your comments. No, let's
all
go
right.
on.
He
Let's go
still
on.
has 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. 2 minutes. Cede it to Mr. Mahoney.
Mr. Maroney.
Hi again. Regarding the potential cuts and the threats of financial issues, it's a good conversation to have, of course. And this is one of the reasons why, whatever happens, we have to think about how do we generate money for all these endeavors and to keep the hospital going. And we really should be thinking out of the box and really looking at grants. And, even look at all the oil that, for example, just as an example of out of the box, all the oil that comes out of California and where does all that money go? I don't know. Maybe we can sink an oil well and if everyone gets the medical. I know that sounds crazy, but the point is thinking outside of the box to generate funding, because it really is abysmal that our medical system is not funded as well as our wars are, in a sense, I know that sounds like some political statement, but the point is that we really need to have top quality health care. We don't have enough money in the system, in my opinion, and we need to get more money in it, and that should be on the top of the way we think, because again, we have to forge the future. This is our job right here as we're alive, and what are we going to leave? This is a legacy. We need to think differently and transmute this into something excellent. We can do that, but we have to really think outside of the box, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Are there any more public comments at this point? Okay, then let's go on to new business. The first item is new business is to receive and file a check register report, actual versus budget report, treasury bill inventory portfolio, and summary of cash balances. And with a recommended action to accept and file a check register report, actual or budget report, treasury bill inventory portfolio, and summary of cash benefits, balances. Mr. Allen?
Thank you. On the check register, all of the expenses.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen, I made a mistake, excuse me. There should be public comment before we begin that, item 5.
No.
Oh, no.
We do the staff
Okay.
report, inquiries from the board, and then inquiries to the staff,
okay.
or to the presenter, and then
Okay.
public comment.
Great, thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
go ahead, Mr.
It's been a
Allen,
long
sorry.
night.
Okay, the recurring expenses, except for one item that Kathy just mentioned in her report, on the ambulance purchase, $218,994 was spent during the month of January, and that's a non-recurring expense, and comes up probably every couple of years. So, and then let's go to the actual budget report. I'll get into some of the expenses. And there, up in the investment income area, we did have $10,631 of interest income that matured and was put into cash and reinvested. And year to date, you can see over on the right, we're at $347,000 against the budget of $386. But we'll pick that up here in the next few months. Item 3G, I mentioned last month that there would be a large item hitting for a public request act, and 10 out of the 15,963 of legal expense, actual legal, 10,325 is for a request from Malcolm McDonald for a PRA. So the biggest share of that went for that. And the law firm used cheapest situation they could with paralegal. And it still was 10,325. Going down, Kathy, total operating expenses are $2,000 under budget. Year to date, we're 110,000 under budget. So doing nicely against the budget. Next page.
Oh, sorry, hold on.
Is the treasury bills. There, they're looking at the current inventory. It adds up to a par value, face value of $13,538,300 and 13.5 million. The purchase price is discounted, and then we realized 174,000 of income when they mature, bringing it up to the 13.5. So, and clear over on the right, you can see the new interest rates are really holding around 4.4 to 4.3. So we're getting good yields there, and the expectation is that may continue to hold for another 3 to 4 months, so we'll see. And then the next page on that merely is the historical matured treasury bills, and down at the bottom in the total is what the total is. We had in the interest income, we realized 338,000. That other page, we had over 170,000 on the books. We're at the $500,000 threshold for interest income. And what I'm doing, if we go back to the last page, first page, down a little bit, Kathy, I am taking that 338,000 that has matured and adding it to new purchases. So the interest income is quickly put into a new face value, and so it accumulates, compounds itself monthly or however these maturities come due. So it's not sitting around being, it's being reinvested very quickly and wisely. And I keep a track of that in there, and 338,000 is reinvested. The 174,000 that's on that page has not matured yet, but it'll be reinvested as it matures. Okay, last page is the cash, or no, this page, with the government downsizing, I want to keep my surveillance on what's happening with the U.S. Treasury, and make sure that they have $13,538,300 recorded on their books, which they do. So I measure that at the end of every month to make sure I don't have to do some kind of reconciliation or some kind of goofiness that's going on. And that's never occurred, and hopefully it will never occur. So That's my check and balance on that. And then the very last page, Kathy, is the cash balances. We go to that. And there, I've segregated in a different column the Measure C fund. It's restricted. There's a $4,550,000 in there at the end of January, but it's restricted money, and some of it's committed for projects underway already, so it's not free money, discretionary money that the district can spend. This money has been put into the improvements fund, and it's been spoken for. Over on the left column then is we've got our treasuries at cost, $13,363,000. Then you see the Tri-County's amount and the operations account. And then I set up the separate Measure C tax revenue account. It has $966,000. And then the LAIF account was $625,000. So that total is 15 million, almost 15.5 million of funds that are what I call discretionary for the district, but discretionary has its boundaries too. So that's my report. If there's any comments or questions.
Okay, we're now open for public comment. Mr. Ramos?
Thank you. Wayne, I think you're doing an incredible job, but I do need to call you out. When you mention that PRA and mention a community member, it does sound like he is wasting the funds. When last meeting he disputed that the PRA was done correctly. So I don't think you should be calling out community members in that way. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. McDonald?
On that point, the history of this is that in the first week of March of 2023, I filed a public records request for emails sent and received by 3 board members from a period that was about 3 months and 3 weeks time span in 2019. In, I think, October, Susan might remember better, I still have the envelope you gave me the thumb drive in that had the corresponding emails for one of the 3 board members. It was even divided into sent and received categories. That was done with no staff other than an interim legal counsel. The public records request then hung in limbo for essentially emails from the other 2. There's some crossover. The other 2 board members from the time period in 2019. In late September of last year, I received from Kathy as agency administrator, essentially something like a zip file that within it had 6 separate batches of email. When I opened batch 1, it displayed that it had 23,436 pages. In a general sense, the first email on page 1 was from 2022, a far cry from 2019. In general, for those 23,436 pages, somewhere between 3 to 4% of it was from 2019. Overall, in the 6 batches, there were 33,000, I forget how many hundreds, I want to say 800 and something. And something in the, I want to say 7%, but I didn't bring that page with me. Batch 2, which had several hundred pages of documents, had 0 emails from 2019. Batch 3 had 7,961 pages. After page 130 something, there was nothing from 2019. What most of the thousands and thousands of extra pages were spreadsheets. One was an Excel spreadsheet from, you could see the email from the board member to themselves from October 18th of 2022 preceded it because it was in multiple batches. And it's a spreadsheet having to do with the, so to speak, commingled charges between Adventist Health and the district, but not from, not an email from 2019. And it went on, I'm not embellishing it, for thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of this Excel spreadsheet. Another thing that went on for hundreds and hundreds of pages was something from the assessor's office to East Shore Consulting from a year not 2019 that essentially was just the roll sheet of citizens of the healthcare district and their addresses. And then in some instances where it was repeated, it just had one name on a page. And then the next page you might see their address, John Smith. The next page, there's 23,000 Navarro Ridge Road. Just junk. So, to me, it looked like an information dump on me on purpose. I mean, that's just going the other end of the road. Like, we're just going to dump this on Malcolm for him wanting to have this request fulfilled. But regardless of what the intentions were, as I said, the first page of the first batch was from 2022. Some oversight beyond the legal, first of all, you might want to ask the legal counsel for 93% of the charges being reduced, since 93% of the documents are not from the time period requested. And I could bring my laptop in here and plug it in and show it to you if you need to. It's just ridiculous. And to
30
have
seconds remaining.
the chair sort of prompt Wayne at the last regular meeting to bring this up and sort of put the onus, the blame on the citizen for filing, this request is a complete reversal. It's Orwellian. And there should have been some oversight, either from the RGS agency administrator or the chair, who is,
Okay, but
according to the power, she hasn't rung the bell on me, so why are you interrupting, as usual? I want those last 15 seconds or so back because he was interrupting. Please. I think this is important.
15 seconds, go ahead.
I hope you get it, that if you guys, they were public documents, so Ms. Wiley or Mr. Garza could have opened them up and looked at them. Page 1, oh, this doesn't go with what the request was. And then went, whoa, what's going on? But no, you sat here and prompted Wayne to essentially blame me for filing the request.
That's more than 15 seconds.
Yeah, well,
Thank
this
you.
demands it.
Thank
I
you.
would like to have an apology from
Thank
either
you. Thank you
or
for
the
your
board in
comments.
general or the agency administrator.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, is there any more public comment?
We do not have any hands raised online.
What did she
Hello?
say?
No, there's no one online.
No one online. Okay, thank you. Okay, then can we have a motion to receive, accept and file the check register report, the actual versus budget, the treasury bill inventory portfolio, summary of cash balances?
I'll make that,
Okay, go.
I'll-
Go.
I'll make that motion to accept
Okay,
those.
is there a second? Is that
I'll
Ms.
second.
Director Savage? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call?
Okay, Paul Katzif
Abstain.
and Jan McGorty.
Yes.
Susan Savage, yes. Lynn Finley,
Yes.
Paul Garza.
Yes?
Okay, so the report is accepted.
Okay, now we're on to the items 5B, receive and consider approval of the Adventist Health Medical Mendocino Coast Hospital Capital Expense Reconciliation Report dated 7/1/2020 through 1/31/2025, recognizing $4,283,815 of additional KAKX purchases and a cash transfer of $667,141 from the Operations Fund into the Improvement Fund. This is from Peter Johnston, Adventist Health Mendocino Coast Hospital Facilities Manager, CFO Allen, and Agency Administrator Wiley. The recommended action is to approve Adventist Health Mendocino Coast Hospital expense reconciliation report dated again July 1st, 2020 through January 31st, 2025, recognizing $4,283,850 of additional CAPEX purchases and a cash transfer of $667,141 from the operations fund into the improvement fund. With that, Mr. Johnston.
No.
Thank you. I'm Peter Johnston, your facility manager here at Adventist Health Mendocino Coast. And I would like to thank Wayne for the work he's done with me to go through these reports together. We spent quite a bit of time, met several times. So Jeff Mock had directed his finance team to put the reconciliation together, and then we reviewed that with Wayne, and Kathy was observing. So Wayne and I went through all this and have agreed on the numbers, which is always...
Peter, let me introduce these overview sheets, okay?
I would love to have you chime in here, Wayne.
Okay, all right, let me take over from what you're looking at.
These numbers, I guess, is the message.
Now, what you're looking at now is a 30,000 foot level summation of what we're up against and what's occurred. And the top part is the lease payments that have been sent in. And then there was a special allocation that the district did back in 2020 and for $2 million. So anyway, the total funds received are $12,649,000. And the funds that have already been approved by this district board and other district boards total almost $8,100,000. So it leaves that cash available of $4.5 million at the end of January. But you'll see what's going to be happening to that in a little bit. And then down below, the projects that have been approved by the district, like the district boards and so forth, it total just over 9 million. And then you're going to be hearing tonight, there's another almost 4.3 million on the horizon. So we'll have projects underway of 13.3 million. You compare that to up at the top to the funds that have been received, we're in the whole 667,000. So we'll have to deal with that in a motion to put 667,000 into the improvements fund to balance it out. We're not like the federal government where you can do deficit spending. So page 2. Then I have here a synopsis of the projects that have been approved by the various boards. You see the first one was 2.2, and these first 3 are so similar in dollar size, but 2.2 there at 21, go on down, Kathy, in June of 24, another 2.2 million. And then a tag along with that in April also is a 2.2 million. So little over about 6.6 million on that page. Go to the next page, Kathy. And there the board approved in November almost 2 million, 1.986. And then also in January of just last month, another 305,000. So that's the 9,032,000 that have been approved. If you go back up to the summary page again, and then 9,032, keep going, Kathy, up to that. There's the 9,032 that has been approved. Okay, let's go back down again. Another And then here's a synopsis summary of the cash receipts that went in by year starting with 2021, the year that ended June 30 of 21. And there you see what's coming from the Measure C tax receipts as the first 1A, and then 1B is the supplemental to bring it up to 2 million, then inflation for the next year, a few years there. And so that's the 10 million going over to the total area. That's the 10,600,000 that is supplemental funds that have gone in. There was an overpayment made of 30,000 on one payment, and then that 2 million special distribution comes to total funds received 12,649. 12,649. Go back to the beginning. 12,649. There it is up at the top. There's where my 12,649. Those funds have been received. Okay, Kathy, keep going down back. Then down below, we've got the board approvals that were on the other page on number 2 there of 9 million, just over 9 million. So it leaves a balance of 3.6 million that can be approved. But then let's go one more page then. Now, then we get into back to the first page then, 3.6. So when you approve the, and I do recommend it, when you do approve the 4.3 almost there, it puts us up totally 13.3, and we have that deficit. So Peter, you can take over now with your detail.
Well, thank you, Wayne. So this is 5 years of finances that Wayne and Adventist Health Finance have gone through. Thousands of invoices. It's a lot. So thank you, Wayne, for your dedication to this and getting it through. And it shows that you really are working for the public here. So thank you. Let's see. So thank you, Wayne, for that summary. So that gets us to this next section, which is Appendix A of Wayne's and I's report, which is a summary of projects that are underway or we're asking for approval. They need to be approved in the amount of $4,283,815. And these are projects that we will be using the improvement fund money that's already in the improvement fund. So we're just asking for an approval request to use this money and put it to work, which is what our goal here is, to put the taxpayers' money to work to improve the facility. So we're asking that you please approve that request. And then the next page of this is all of the improvement fund reconciliation with all of the numbers that Wayne has just gone through from his spreadsheets. These are all the numbers that Jeff Mock and his finance team have gone through to put together in this spreadsheet. We agree on the numbers, the approved amount of $9,032,504, and the balances all jive. So I won't rehash all those numbers again, but
Oh, please.
all of the numbers match. And if we go back to the one sheet to the approval, so we're asking.
Stop, Kathy. Stop on that sheet there. Go down to the bottom. There's the total that we agree to. The $4,283,000. There's the detail for it there, and then go back to the first page. $4,283,000. There it is down there to be approved, and then that makes us go from 9 million to 13.3. Like I said, then we're short. Funds up at the top are 12.6. we're short funds of $667,000 that need to be in the motion to transfer out of the operations fund to the improvements fund. So it remains solvent.
So Wayne, just to restate this, at the end of all this, we will have reconciled the accounts and we will have balanced the improvement fund. So all of the
all the invoices to back
all the
it
invoices
up.
to back it up, all of the information has been backed up. So this is going to put 100% of the improvement fund to work rather than sitting in the bank. That's our goal here. So I ask that you please approve these. We do.
Okay, thank you very much. Board questions?
Yeah, Kathy, one more thing I want to call to the board's attention is go to the, I think it's the fourth sheet, keep working down a second, yeah, there, okay. I want to make a critical moment here. And the June 30, 25 column, June, the year we're in right now.
June is the next payment.
The year we're in right now. When we made the improvements fund payment in July 24, and then we made the second one in January of 25. The total we had to put in was $2,251,000, 2.2 million. All of that money came from the district, all of it. There's a zero up there for Measure C, and that needs to be cured when they have their meeting and do their oversight review of all those documents that we've got that we're spending Measure C criteria of funds, and then that money needs to be transferred back into our operating fund. They should have had a line entry up there like in the other years, and I have not I've not released it because it's restricted until they do their oversight. Okay, so.
And the projects on the list that we're asking to be approved, I believe,
Yes.
and Adventist believes all will meet the criteria, and we'll be happy to go to the Measure C meeting and present our case for that. And assist the
Okay.
board in those matters.
Okay, can we go to board questions now, please? Okay, seeing none, public comment? Oh,
Yeah.
Director McGordy?
Yeah, I'm on page 18.
Speak into your mic, Jan.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It says patient monitoring
18.
system
Okay, got it.
for 218,000.
I need to know which.
It's on, it's like 3 from the end.
Well,
So
I'm
what's the
sorry,
sub
Jean.
number?
Are we talking about the reconciliation exhibit B?
Page 18.
Page 18.
Well,
Your last page.
Page 18, and then if you could
Exhibit
identify
B?
the number
That
here.
one.
Exhibit
Oh,
B.
there's a number?
So this
Oh.
is
The items
this
right
is
here.
the approved projects list. So
Yeah.
these projects were already approved, Jan.
These were already approved?
They were approved in prior meetings, prior boards. These are all the projects that have been approved in almost 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. 4.5.
Which one did you have?
It'll be 5 in July.
It was 4.46. I'm having a hard time seeing.
4.46?
Right.
4.0.
It's patient care monitoring system for
Patient care monitor-
218.
Yeah, so that's the Nihon Koden upgrade. Those are the patient monitors, so that's vital sign monitors. And you may remember I presented that a couple months back of the vital sign monitors that we have from the 80s. They're Hewlett-Packard, I believe. And so this would be to upgrade to Nihon Koden, which is the standard for patient care.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Any public comment? Mr. Ramos?
I just have a question for Peter and Wayne. If you look at the requested amounts, some of them are quite old, from 21, 23. Do you guys now have a process to do that sooner more efficiently?
Yes, thank you. So, thank you for that question. Yeah, so Paul's comment earlier of the communication between Adventist and the board it's amazing. It's nice, clear blue skies. We're meeting regularly. Yes, so over the past 4.5 years, we've been kind of struggling, and just the last year, we've actually made progress in perfecting our procedures and following the processes and getting the forms input to Wayne. So the process in the future will be we will propose the projects for the board to approve before. That's why had mentioned the improvement fund will be balanced if we can get this to go through, so that we can follow the procedure in the future of asking before we need to use the money.
So do we need to do something?
Yeah,
Yes.
we have a motion. Any more public comment at this point? Okay, hearing none.
Thank
then, let's go back to board discussion.
Having been on this.
Go ahead.
I want to just make a statement. Having been on this board for 2 years and 4 months, and at least 2 years and 3 months struggling, watching the struggle to get caught up and clean has been an excruciating mental experience. However, I want to congratulate you and Wayne, and I know that Susan had a lot of those same experiences that I had, but she struggled with it more because she was in the weeds with the numbers. I was just an innocent observer and bystander. Anyway, I want to congratulate you for an incredible piece of work with large numbers and all kinds of other details. Good work.
Any further discussion? Okay, then we have a motion that,
Do we?
There is a recommended action.
yeah, that's what I'm just going to read. Recommended action is to approve
What page are you on?
we're on 5B, go to 5B. The expense reconciliation report, we're going to approve this. Recognizing $4,283,815 of additional KAKX purchases, and in addition, a cash transfer of $667,141 from the operations fund into the improvements fund. That is the recommended action. Do we have a motion?
Sure.
Okay, you move that,
I
okay,
move that we follow the recommendation.
okay, accept the recommendation, okay. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
Second? Okay, any,
Yeah, I have a question. What is the operation fund?
that would be money that we have in our bank account.
Money from us?
Yeah, money from us. And that
Going
would-
into,
Into the account that is in the bank of.
so that would be out of our, what is
Right,
it, 13,000?
It's the 13 million. Yeah.
13 million?
But some of that will be covered by Measure C funds once they go through it.
I'm sorry?
And won't some of that be reimbursed through Measure C once they go through?
Potentially, but
Potentially.
let's not get into
Okay,
Measure C.
right,
I mean,
right.
we have to make a decision about what we want to go forward with. Yeah, potentially.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, right? So, we ready for roll call?
Paul Katzif,
Yes.
Jen McGordy,
Yes.
Susan Savage, yes. Lynn Finley,
Yes.
Paul Garza.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now, we have the receive and consider adoption of a board mission statement revision dated February 17th, 2025. This came out of our most recent workshop. And Agency Administrator Eileen, you're on point on this?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to get to it right now. Okay, so you will obviously recall that a couple weeks ago, you spent about 3 hours trying to figure out a current mission statement, and The one that you produced from the workshop is listed in the agenda. It reads, the mission statement reads, MCHCD provides a hospital and fosters leadership, advocacy, and collaboration for our community health and well-being. And I talked about the vision statement in my board report tonight. Obviously, I'm asking you to adopt the mission statement you discussed last week, and we'll have a follow-up meeting or workshop about vision.
That would be strategic planning.
Okay.
I move that we accept this mission statement.
Well, before we do that, we need to, if questions,
No.
hearing none, okay, public comment? Public comment? Okay, none? Okay, go ahead, ask your question.
I move that we accept the mission statement.
Okay, is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, please, or at least,
can I have-
roll call, sorry.
Okay, is it, but yeah,
Well, I did ask for public comment, but if you missed it, that's all right, go ahead, let's, if you've got,
No, I just didn't, I want to make sure.
We got it. Thank you.
okay, now, how about board comment
Oh,
before you vote?
Gabe,
No, go, you're first.
go ahead.
Okay, I just want to mention, this was a fun meeting. It took a while, but you guys got there, the one where you guys came up with a mission. But my preference was when there was kind of like the open general statement of health and well-being, and then a second bullet point of we are committed to having a hospital, as opposed to, this one says, we have this hospital, blah, 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 blah. So, and that's so that there's like one item bullet point saying that you are committed to the hospital, but that also leaves it open-ended for the vast, wide ability of what healthcare actually means. Anyway, you guys are probably going to adopt this, but I thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We have a motion now?
We do, but we get to have board discussion before we vote.
Right.
Okay, fine. Well, go ahead, since we're out, fine, let's have the board discussion, please.
Okay. I think what was interesting about our retreat is that we had two separate groups who were working, as I understand how it came out, that one group was working on what somebody defined as a mission statement, while the other group was probably more working on a vision statement. And so those two groups were working on a different premise. That was why I asked for the product of the other group to be shared, because we were going, I think, ultimately in the same direction, but maybe with a slightly different emphasis. So I'm hoping that when we do get around to refining what the vision is, assuming that we're going to adopt this as the mission, that we can also all understand what it is that we're doing, because I've been looking and doing research on the difference between mission and vision, and it's all over the place. And so I think it would be helpful that we understand that. And I also wanted the work of the other group that was maybe doing a vision statement to be included, so that the public knew that there is discussion about some of the broader issues, and that it isn't just about the hospital. So that was my comment.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I support that. This is like, there's no cow, but there's a bottle of milk. Nobody, I mean, where did this come from? So,
Okay.
and I had assumed that we were going to bring both what we assumed was the vision statement and the mission statement together, so people could have more of a sense of what we went through. And this is, I'm opposed to voting on this as it is. I may like this, it's the wrong process. There's not enough here to grab onto and have some background. And I think that we need more. I think Gabe, was referring to that background. There was a lot of information about what is advocacy, what are we advocating. There was definition in the vision part of this that defines a little bit about advocacy. You don't see it because it's not here.
It is in Kathy's report, though.
Well, Kathy's, yeah. You get my point.
Okay, other questions? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the, so roll call, please.
Okay, Paul Garza,
Yes?
Paul Katzif.
I'm not sure right now.
Do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah.
Okay, Jan McGorty,
Yes.
Susan Savage, yes. Lynn Finley,
Yes.
and back to Paul Katzif.
Yeah, I'll approve the statement as is, but I'll state my opinion. I have stated my opinion that I don't think there's, the cow is not here. We just got the milk bottle.
Got it.
Okay, we're now at consent calendar. There are 3 items for approval, draft minutes of the last regular board meeting on January 23rd. The draft minutes from the special board workshop on February 17th, and a savings bank resolution to obtain district bank statements. Okay. Okay. Let's see, did we ask for if anybody wants to pull an item first? I know that, I know I need to say that, but, okay. So it appears that there, yes?
I have a motion that we adopt the consent calendar.
Well, I got to go to public comment first.
Oh.
Sorry. Public comments may be heard prior to board vote on a consent calendar after board members had the opportunity to remove any item. Board policy continues. There will be no further opportunities for public comments. Mr. McDonald.
I think I would like 2 things. One, why is it I understand the chair being part of this. Why isn't it the treasurer of the board working with the chair? Or if it's going to include the agency administrator, why not also include the treasurer for this? And I would also like to know what is the purpose. This is kind of generalized language. Is this to go back through the accounts at Savings Bank? Or to just be the
Can you tell us what you're
signers?
addressing, please?
He's addressing the savings bank resolution.
Okay, great. That's what I thought, but I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
thank you. I should have said it
Yeah,
first.
no, that's
You're
okay.
right. So, I think the treasurer should be added to the list of people. You probably need to have the agency administrator because she's doing so much, this kind of, she probably needs to be in the loop, in other words. But I'd like to know why, is this just to have their signatures to, as the other resolutions that we do in January are, or is this for some other purpose of going through those accounts for some purpose that we're not really seeing here? Could that be answered?
Okay, well, I believe we talked about that. This is for the, we need to have all of the bank statements from that period of time in order to do the audit. Currently, we cannot complete the audit for the year 2020, 2021, because there were missing bank statements, and there were several of them. So without those, the auditor cannot complete that. Without being able to complete the 2021 audit, they are unable to carry forward a balance in order to conduct the 2021, 22, 22, 23, et cetera. So it's fairly important we get those records straightened out. And the only other comment I'd make is this is just a standard resolution. It has nothing to do with who's going to be involved in it. Obviously, our treasurer, Director Finley, is going to be very much involved in this. But it's just a standard resolution.
I think I mentioned that those bank statements are all, those bank accounts are all closed accounts.
If I may, could I say that the language about needing them for the audit should be included here or any motion? I think that's very important.
What we are adopting is a resolution that follows the parameters that are established by the bank, not, and we need to do it the way that they want it. Otherwise, they will not approve it. Okay, does that make sense?
I don't think the back and forth is appropriate.
Yes, it's not, okay, so let's, do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
I move that we adopt the,
Okay, is there a second?
Hold it, wasn't this part of the consent
Director
calendar?
Finley
Yeah.
seconded?
I'm
This is
sorry,
all
your
part-
motion was to adopt the consent
Consent
calendar.
calendar, which includes this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
it does.
It hasn't had a second yet that I know.
Yeah, it did.
Okay,
does.
Ms. Director
Lynn?
Finley seconded?
Okay.
Okay.
For the consent calendar.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, roll call?
Okay, Lynn Finley,
Yes.
Paul Garza,
Yes.
Paul Katza,
Yes.
Jan McGorty,
Yes.
and Susan Savage, yes. So the consent calendar is adopted.
Okay, with that, we're now at comments from the board. Let me call on Director Finley first. I know that she has something she wants, she's brought forward.
I wanted to bring forward the idea of having an ad hoc committee that is for the purpose of bringing together community organizations that serve our community, that to identify what each organization does and what their needs are, get everybody at the same table, to talk about, what services they provide for our community, what's the gaps, whether it's people, money, and maybe if we have everybody at the same table, that all provide different aspects of care to our community, including the foundations, that we might be able to come up with some solutions, because we're looking at some hard times. A lot of our community is going to be facing a lot of hard times. And we don't even know really what community members really themselves have things to bring to the table. We might have some of the farms who will be willing to bring in some of the extra produce to the table too. So I'd like to be able to have an ad hoc committee that will bring the different organizations together in the public, have this discussion, and having open public comments after each agency kind of presents their story, to be able to get more information from the community about what they would want to look for, and have it be something that's not just a one-off, just something that could continue for a couple of meetings, and hopefully have it kind of create its own life.
Great.
Yeah.
Director McGorty, she's a board member. She has no limit on what she can say.
That was on Malcolm, I'm sorry. See, he didn't talk very long at all.
I'm done.
Okay.
I
I think this is, Director Finley, I want to congratulate you. I think it's a wonderful idea. It's clearly something we should do, and it fits directly into our adopted mission statement. So thank you for that. Is there any further comments, Director Katz?
Am I commenting? I'll comment that. I'll say I am absolutely for what you just said. So if it comes to any kind of a vote, you have my vote. I have two things I want to talk to. One, the first one is I think we have some something unresolved here, at least for me. Malcolm, one of our community members, asked for an apology. He made a thoughtful statement about defending his honor and asked for an apology. Now, the question becomes, what's real and what's not? So, if there's a rebuttal, or if Malcolm is correct in what he said, then we owe him an apology for accusing him in subtle ways, or at least impugning his integrity by what transpired. So we need to deal with this, because this is about our honor.
Director Ketsup, if you go back to Ms. Wiley's report, she is putting together a complete recapitulation of this whole thing, and we'll have that for us
So I want
shortly.
an answer to the question of how did thousands of pieces of data, that's the only question, really, is did he, can you prove that you got thousands of pieces of data? Do you have the, well, that's wrong. We have a simple, there's no rebuttal to that if he has the evidence.
Well,
Okay, enough.
We both have the same thing.
Okay.
So we have those documents.
So I'm asking for this to be resolved in an honorable way.
And I think
Okay.
that's the intention.
I didn't say it wasn't.
Okay, all right.
I'm just asking, right?
Any more comments?
I have one other,
One more.
I'm not finished. I was tasked with an ad hoc committee to to be part of an ad hoc committee to assess the hospice store and its relationship to Adventist and to the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District in terms of resolving the lease issue. Because it was part of the lease negotiations. And I was on that committee, and we all were totally surprised at how simple the solution would be, what was really something to be resolved. What was to be resolved was they didn't want, Adventists did not want to be operating the hospice thrift store. Would we take it on? And we said we have to take a look at it, and then the chair asked me to be on the, or I volunteered to be on the ad hoc committee to investigate what was going on. And I spent a lot of time, and I made my investigations, and I wanted to have my report as part of this meeting, but things didn't work out that way. Doesn't matter that they didn't work out that way or why they didn't, but I prepared a report which I think indicated that we should really have a big discussion about this at some time soon. Because what I learned was the potential and the problems. And it's not, I could read my recommendations at this point, but I would really like the background to be part of it. So my report, hopefully, when would this be available?
I'll publish it tonight or tomorrow morning.
And I have a couple of copies. I can give you one, Malcolm, and I can give you one,
You can take this one.
Gabriel. So I just wanted to make it clear that that ad hoc committee has done some of its work, and it requires some board discussion and
I'm prepared if you're willing to. You suggested earlier that you'd like to continue the work and you see some kind of a potential promise both for the community and for ourselves. You also suggested that it might be easier if you worked with a different member of the board because of some scheduling problems. So I think I'm prepared to go that direction.
That's great.
If that's the will of the board. Is that reasonable?
Mm-hmm. What do we
And
have
so if Director Finley doesn't mind, I can ask that Mr. Director Katsup and Director Savage continue that work?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so let's go.
Thank
And
you.
then,
That's
if you
great.
want to why don't you bring forth the report next month formally?
Thank you.
Okay.
Will do.
Okay, let's go back to Ms. Finley,
Yeah.
Director Finley. She has a proposal, so I'd also like to start an ad hoc there as well. Okay, and if you don't mind, I'd like to participate in that with you.
Okay.
All right?
Could I ask, is it opportunity just to discuss something? I would just hope that what could come out of this is some kind of an inventory of our assets.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yeah, in that regard, I believe we've got a bit of a start. If you look at our webpage, I don't know where the source was from Ms. Wiley, but she's pulled down something that begins that.
From Cynthia?
And I know that
No, it's the County of Mendocino Library
Right.
runs a resource page, and it's linked to that. And then I have another link. It's about aging. I just received that email again. So I am building it, but
Yeah,
could obviously
And
contribute.
my hopes is this will grow from not just established resources, but also people in the community who also want to be part of the solution.
Yeah,
Here.
I think I've heard about this, and I think
Norm is
yes,
getting your attention.
There's a hand up.
yes.
Yes, Chair. This hasn't been something that has been agendized and providing the opportunity for the public to speak on. That wouldn't be appropriate for right now at this time on the agenda either. What I suggest is this is a support from the majority of the board that you put it on a future agenda for the board to figure out what the charges of the ad hoc committee, the duration of the ad hoc committee, because as we know, ad hocs are short term, and then make the appointment. I would not suggest making the appointment tonight, as I feel that that has gone beyond the spirit of the Brown Act.
Okay, I appreciate your advice, so I guess we will defer this to our next meeting, but we'll get, but I think these are both really good directions for us to be going, and I think it, in my view, it fulfills the mission statement that we created, as well as the vision statement that was drafted, potential business. Okay, anyway. So any more comments from the board? Director McGordy?
Yeah, I have 3 comments. First is an apology to Susan, because we had a very productive meeting on planning out community meetings that I was supposed to review and send on to Kathy, which I didn't do. I'll do it.
Cool.
The second is that I think we should really seriously consider joining some organizations. There's an Association of California Healthcare Districts, and there's the California State Rural Health Association, because we can't do this by ourselves. We really need to join others that are in the same situation in order to have some kind of advocacy that's going to work.
And potentially also share experiences with.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and finally, I want to say that Kathy pointed me to the.
Before we do that, can I just be, because I don't want to drop that, could we ask that we place, that you come forward with a recommendation at our next meeting for those organizations?
Can we put that on the agenda?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
work with Jan on
So
that,
with the
and I'll
agenda.
work with you, Lynn.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, but I wanted to make sure we didn't
Sure.
lose that. Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
thought it was supposed to be here. Anyway,
Okay.
so there's a room yonder. It's called the Neva something room.
Neva Cannon.
Neva Cannon room, and it's sitting there being empty. And we've had this wonderful idea that maybe the board could claim it, and it could be it could be our personal boardroom, so we didn't have to always go, to the Adventist calendar to book this room. And so Peter's been really helpful in moving out a bunch of junk, and I have a couple of people lined up to paint it.
Oh,
And
wow.
Have they fixed the Wi-Fi issues out there?
well, Marshall's going to check on it. Yeah, and there's actually some sound equipment out there, so he's going to see if it still works. And then then he doesn't have to lug this around every time. Yeah.
So that's again a future kind of thing. We need to get some
Well,
resolution.
sooner than later, yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not saying we put it off forever, but it's,
It's
That-
going forward. We are working on it, making it become the future board of directors room.
okay.
That's a great, assuming that was a topic that came folded in with the ad hoc committee of future board meetings and locations and community meetings. It's a great way to fold into that report for next month as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I'm just writing down all the agenda items for next month.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Director Savage?
I'll save it for when we have the conversation.
Okay.
Okay. Because it's late
Okay.
and, yeah.
Okay.
Director Savage, I had note though that you wanted to discuss the bylaws, a request for a future agenda item for the bylaws of the finance side of it, or the Measure C, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that you
I'm
wanted a
sorry,
future
I
discussion for
can't,
vision?
try that again. I
Uh,
wanted to do what? I'm sorry?
There was discussion to be brought up about a future agenda item on the bylaws that you wanted to discuss further I'm sorry, not the Measure C. I'm sorry, it was the chair's role. And then also a future discussion item on a vision statement. Has direction been given on those 2 items?
I believe that there was already discussion, I believe, of having the vision statement be another follow-up process. And I think that's already somewhere in the works.
Yep.
The other one was that I was suggesting that if people wanted to change and I wasn't necessarily moving that, but that if there was a desire to change the described job of the chair, that should be brought up and agendized and not mixed with the conversation of the items that we had. That was my comment, but that wasn't my request that we do that. That would be up to someone else to request that.
But there was a request to have an item about Measure C.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually,
let's-
that goes back a long way. There have been multiple requests over months, if not years, to have some kind of thorough training on exactly how Measure C is supposed to function so that we all start with the same understanding,
Okay.
which would include Jim Hurst and our CFO
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other people that can help us to all understand it, because it keeps changing, in my view.
Okay, so we need that
Okay.
on the agenda for next month,
Maybe.
Whenever.
okay? Well, it's
Yeah.
better that we get to things rather than delay. Okay, so with that, I think we are pretty much concluded our business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
Okay, the second?
Jan?
Director McGordy,
Yeah.
roll call.
Okay, Jan McGordy.
Yes.
Susan Savage, yes. Lee Finley.
Yes.
Lynn Finley.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. Paul Garza.
Gosh, this is so much fun. We should do another 4 hours. Yes.
And Paul Katzen.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Please note for the record. Is that what you have, Secretary Savage?
Pardon me?
The time?
I just put 8:39.
Started my day
Perfect.
at 6 in
Yeah.
the morning.
Oh, wow. You must be tired.
I'm weird. I'm not tired. I'm
You're what?
weary.
You're weird.